Learning English, it's not so easy. Listen to Anna's story and read along with me to practice your pronunciation. My name is Anna, and I am 38 years old. I live in a small town called Kennett Square now, and it is about a 45-minute drive from the city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. 2.5 years ago, my family and I moved here from our native country, Brazil. We lived in Curitiba, a beautiful city in southern Brazil. We came to the United States by plane. We took a flight from Rio de Janeiro to London and then finally landed in Philadelphia. The whole flight lasted a very long 15 hours and 30 minutes. We were exhausted. After the flight, we rented a car and drove from Philadelphia to our home in Kennett Square. My husband Paolo and I brought our 2 children with us. We wanted to give them more opportunities to study and to work in the United States. Our daughter, Marisa, was 11, and our son, Antonio, was 9 when we arrived. They both attended elementary school then, but now they are in middle school. Of course, because they went to school every day, Marisa and Antonio learned to speak English very quickly. But my husband and I struggled. We took evening English as a second language classes and also studied independently. We used the computer, we watched videos and television programs in English, and we listened to the radio. We practiced every day and we learned a lot, but it's not so easy. English is very different from our native language of Portuguese. When I first started, I had trouble with the pronunciation of some words, and spelling is still difficult at times, but I don't give up easily. I want to improve my English and speak well and understand better, so I will keep practicing. My goal right now is to speak English as well as my children. We're going to review some past tense verbs. You may have noticed as we were reading the story that there were many verbs that were past tense. There were regular verbs which just have an ed at the end of the present tense verb to form the past, and then there are irregular verbs which don't follow that rule at all. I'm going to pronounce for you. If you would like to look on the document that I have, I'm going to pronounce for you the regular verbs in present and past, and the irregular verbs also in the present and the past. Pronunciation is very important of the past tense in English, so you can listen and follow along. Move, moved. Live, lived. Land, landed. Last, lasted. Rent, rented. Want, wanted. Attend, attended. Learn, learned. Struggle, struggled. Study, studied. Use, used. Watch, watched. Listen, listened. Practice, practiced. Start, started. Okay, you may have noticed, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that some of the endings are pronounced ted or dead, and some are just a d sound. We'll talk about that in a minute, as I said, and I have another activity for you. And let's look at the irregular verbs. They don't follow any rules, and so some of these you just have to memorize, but let's look at the ones that were in the story. Come, the past tense is came. Take, the past tense is took. The verb to be appeared twice. Be, of course, in the present tense is I am, you are, he or she, it is, we are, you are, they are. In the past tense, it was used in the plural first and then in the singular. So in the past tense, it's I was, you were, he, she, it was, we were, you were, they were. So we had be as were in the past tense and also be was in the past tense. Drive in the past is drove. Bring in the past is brought. Go in the past is went. And have is had in the past. Okay, now, if we're looking at the regular verbs, a pronunciation can be a little bit tricky. There are verbs that just have that d sound at the end, like moved or lived. And then there are verbs that have ded or ted sound at the end, like landed and wanted. So the rule is that if there is a T or a D sound at the end of the present tense verb, then when we add the ed to form the past tense, we must voice or say the ded or the ted as another syllable with the t and the d pronounced. So here's an activity for you to practice along with me. This is just a d sound at the end. These verbs only have a d sound at the end. Now I'm taking the verbs that were in the story. Moved, lived, arrived, learned, struggled, practiced, used, watched, listened. Okay, now there were 3 verbs that ended in D in the present tense. So when I added the ed, then my last syllable was ded, and I have to pronounce that. The ded needs to be pronounced. So they were landed, attended, studied. And there were 4 verbs that had the T on the end in the present tense. And so when you added the ed, then the last syllable was ted. That has to be pronounced or voiced. So we say lasted, rented, wanted, and started. Now, if you look on the document, you will see that there are some verbs that I came up with at the end, and I want to see if you can pronounce them correctly. So I'll give you a few minutes to take a look at them and see if you can figure out how to pronounce them. And then come back, because I will also be recording that pronunciation. Okay, so let's see how you did. I'm going to go through each one of the rows and pronounce them for you. Ready? So the first row, beginning with called, pushed, ended, counted, defended, opened. The second row, cried, pulled, printed, enjoyed, invited, closed. The third row, visited, graduated, arrived, expanded, collected, decided. And the last row, intended, coded, lied, pretended, missed, painted. Hope you did a good job.